Hey, we're live.
Oh, hey.
All right, so yeah, a bunch of things to talk about today. We're going to get into some Buffalo stuff for sure. I've been deep diving into the possible GMs this morning, and have some really interesting names. I think that maybe other people don't have yet, but we'll get into that. But Mike, what do you have something from last night?
It's a Buffalo story, but it's a funny.
Oh, it's a Buffalo story. I like these Buffalo stories.
Yeah,
America.
Russ,
real America.
Applesauce. I've got my squeezable applesauce. I'm ready to go.
All right.
Russ, you already know this story. So this faux, this fake reaction is
fine. Hockey Fights 8, big game on Saturday in New York City. Thank you.
There you go. And anyway, near where I live, a Moe's Southwest Grill is opening up. The grand opening was today, which for Cheektowaga, New York, is like the Taj Mahal opening up. Right? Anyway, they promoted the fact that the first 50 customers would get a ticket for a free burrito every day for a year. And they opened up at 11 o'clock this morning. Now, my mother, who loves anything free, whatever it is, even if it's something that she can't use, tells me about this and insists that I go there. So I get there at about a minute after 11, and there's maybe 10 people lined up. And I asked the manager, I says, okay, where are the tickets for the free burritos? And the guy says, we had people camped out at midnight waiting 11 hours to get a free burrito coupon for a year.
Holy cow.
What was the weather? What was the weather like last night?
And it was in the 40s, and it was in the 40s, and it was drizzly. So honestly, I don't get it. I mean, life in Cheektowaga is not that boring. Or not.
I don't know. Don't underestimate that, Mike.
Well, we know X experience in Cheektowaga is thrilling. So
like I said, I spent a week there one night. Yeah, it's my
40 degrees and raining. I gotta tell you, unless I'm getting a pile of money, I'm not waiting out there.
Yeah, I mean that's just a recipe for death anyway. I mean, you can't eat that many burritos. Yeah. What the hell? That's terrible.
Anyway, let's start the show.
All right, finishing one text here. All right, here we go. All right, so yeah, we're gonna get into this. I might be getting some texts. I might be getting some calls. This Buffalo thing will go pretty quickly, I think. But there's a bunch of different things happening, and it has to go quickly actually because we're not that far away from the expansion draft and all the things this new GM has to do. Kind of surprising they took as long as they did. All right, here we go. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, April 20th, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings of the hockey world. And we do have a lot of really fun games to talk about last night. A lot of interesting things happened. And we'll get to that soon. But we had a breaking story today that's coming out of Buffalo, New York, which is, I know we have a lot of Buffalo viewers and readers. And the news is, interesting because yesterday we were on this very, very, show discussing how the rumor come out that Eichel was, not interested in signing an extension if Bilesma continued on as a contract. And we're looking at Henderson, the guy who wrote it, or Hamilton, the guy who wrote it. And, saying, wow, that's a gutsy thing to write, if unlike because honestly, either you're totally alienating the coach of your team or you're alienating the star of your team, one or the other. So we probably, Hamilton probably knew this was going to happen, put it that way. But, to make that kind of a call. But I was told, frankly, that, now that both the GM, if you haven't seen the news, that both the GM and the coach Murray and Bilesma have been relieved of their duties, as they say. I'm sure they're very relieved, and they are no longer in charge of that. And I was told this has nothing to do with Jack Eichel, which I'm not really. So I don't.
All right,
come on. Okay. Even if that is true, and it may be, it may not be.
It is true.
It doesn't matter. It's perception. Perception in this case is reality. And because it came out 24 hours before they both get fired that he doesn't want to play for Bilesma, even if he didn't say it, his agent, complained to the hilltops that this was not true. Well, if it happens 24 hours after, true or not true, Jack Eichel's going to be blamed.
Here's the thing. I think when things like this come up now in sports, like sports are pretty like drastic and can seem pretty evil at times with the way things go down, and because it's all public. And so when things go down in public, they never look great. Jack Eichel can come out and tell us all that he didn't say it. It didn't. He could do a whole interview like he did. But if you're going to tell me that he was completely on board with everything that Dan Bilesma did, I'm going to tell you that's not being actually correct either, because we had heard stuff all year about those two.
Oh, yeah. There's no question. There's stuff there. Okay,
there's stuff. Well, hang on. So there was stuff, because yesterday it was like, I didn't say that. Okay, maybe you didn't say that, but you definitely gave the impression at times that you weren't happy. And He did that. And he did that the last day of the year. So there's that. Now, we talked about Murray many times. Probably the trades did him in. And I also think the fact that very few Russians, if any at all, are coming over, like Antipin, who they were kind of hoping on to secure the blue line, that didn't help him. Now, as far as Dan Bilesma goes, to me, he's the one who gets caught up here because, like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, they both deserve it. No, they really didn't, because, again, Bilesma did a good job when that team was injured. That team was close to NHL 500, which we know is not real 500, but I got to tell you, he was doing it with smoke and mirrors. He really was. At the end of the day, I go back to what Jack Eichel said. I want to stay here for a long time. I want to sign a long-term deal. So clearly, whether Jack Eichel called for this or not, and I'm sure he didn't call for it, he was basically signaling to the owner that he would like to stay there and wouldn't like it if Dan Bilesma were there when he was there. Like, that's, for the whole, not for the whole time, but for part of it for sure.
Now, the reporting that's coming out, and again, we'll probably find out more about this as we go along, but the reporting that's coming out this morning is that Murray was not in favor of dismissing Bilesma, and the ownership said, okay, well, if you're not going to fire him, then we're going to fire you both, and that's what they did.
I give him credit for that.
I give him credit for that, but honestly, when you're building a foundation on quicksand, which Tim Murray has done in some instances, he really didn't have the footing to make that kind of statement, because I don't think Dan Bilesma should have been fired. I think that, and I know that it's not just Eichel. There are other players on this team who apparently were not pleased with Bilesma, and that's probably what Pegula looked at and factored in. And obviously, the money didn't matter because Bilesma had 3 more years left in his contract, and I believe Murray signed an extension. But I believed Murray deserved to be fired more than Bilesma, but now, what I'm interested in is who takes over, and if you have some insight on that, because the first name that popped out, and let me ask if you had heard this, the first name that I thought of when I heard the news was Dean Lombardi, because
well, that is obviously you can finish your thought if you want to, but why do you think that? Sorry.
Well, no, because the Pegulas are fascinated with resumes, and you can't get a bigger, better resume than Dean Lombardi with 2 Stanley Cups. He's also tied in with USA Hockey. So maybe that's a factor, but I think they loved the padded resume. That was what attracted them to Rex Ryan, and then unfortunately, to their detriment, that turned out to be a bad move. And now the new Bills coach McDermott is basically had a great resume as an assistant in Carolina, but they like the padded resume, and you can't get more padded than Dean Lombardi.
Yes and no. Lombardi has really, obviously, the Stanley Cups, speak for themselves, and his history with Team USA has been pretty strong, although there's a lot of debate about that lately, so like I don't know if Lombardi's going to be with Team USA much longer. I have a feeling that there's going to be changes there, and at the World Cup of Hockey, there was definitely talk of major changes, with guys like Burke and Lombardi, moving on. Guys like Shiro and others moving more into the fray. But Lombardi is a tough character to deal with. I don't see Lombardi's personality. And yeah, I've heard his name today mentioned as well. And I would not be surprised at all that where he brought in for an interview, because just Pegula is the kind of person who will interview a guy just to get information and to sort of to learn. We can bring Lombardi in, and Lombardi can say, "This is how I build a team. This is what I do." And if you remember, this is what Mike Babcock wouldn't do. Remember the whole thing? Mike Babcock wouldn't go to places and tell them what he was going to do. He refused to do that. Teams wanted to interview him all over the place. His agent said no, and that was a really strange thing for a coach to do, because or for a GM, if you're an owner, you're interviewing a GM, or you're a GM interviewing a coach, you want to know what they're going to do. And usually coaches our GMs are very open about that. I mean, it's not like anyone holds this magic secret sauce. It's not like, that's what I was always funny about.
There is a magic secret sauce, and McDonald's is selling it in supermarkets now. So you're wrong.
Right, well, you can make it.
You're wrong about that.
But it's Thousand Island dressing,
pretty much. But the thing is, I mean, that's what always cracked me up about Babcock. Like, what is this? Does he have some kind of like magic powers over players he's not going to share with us? I mean, no, he's going to do. Well, where Babcock is good is talking to players. And
if he does have magic powers, can he please make Martin Marincin and Jake Gardner good defensemen?
Yeah, right. So Lombardi, I'm going to say, I think that he comes in maybe for an interview, but I'll tell you what I heard this morning, and this is kind of, really interesting, is there might be another place Lombardi lands. And that's a team that has not yet fired their GM, but has who was run by a person who might be a little bit closer to Lombardi than Pegula. But we don't have to get into that yet, because that you can draw your own conclusions there. That's pretty obvious. But Lombardi, I think Lombardi and Sutter, I've heard the combination of them coming in. I just don't see that happening. I don't think Sutter is the right coach for. I mean, you're right. You get all the, publicity of being a Sabres guy and being like, okay, we're bringing in the Kings coach and GM that took him to the Stanley Cup, and also took that team into shambles. I mean, that team is really now they've got a lot of rebuilding to do, right?
Well, the Sabres have gone down that road once before Pegula, obviously, but they brought in John Muckler in the 90s, right, coming off the Edmonton Oilers success, winning a Stanley Cup with them. I think it was 1990. But you know what? I thought John Muckler was a disaster as a general manager in Buffalo. He made a few trades and tried to go a certain direction, and it really didn't work. But no, and there are a number of names that John.
Names. Here's some other names. Okay, so Chris Drury has come up now.
Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
He is very inexperienced, though.
Oh, I know.
I'm just saying, I like Chris Drury. I think he's very sharp. I think he's doing a good job, actually. But it's tough to now elevate him to that position. I don't think he's quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, there are connections with,
Well, can I float this one, Russ?
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. Terry Pegula has bragged when he bought the Sabres about how he was this big Sabre fan who used to go out and listen, find a spot where he could pick up GR radio and listen to the old team, the French Connection play or whatever. Jim Schoenfeld is an assistant GM with the Rangers. I mean, do you think he goes down that road? Because
no, I don't. I think Schoenfeld is in in a spot he's comfortable with the Rangers, and I think. I don't want to say he's getting older, but he's getting older, and so I think Schoenfeld would stay where he is rather than trying to do that.
Right.
I'll give you a name before Eck floats his other ones, just because I'm going to give you the name of Neil Smith, and I'll tell you why. For one thing, he's only coached recently GM New York teams, even though the Islanders was for a very short time.
Yeah, right.
But if you go back to when he was the Ranger GM, Buffalo needs Neil Smith for the same exact reason. If you remember that Wayne Gretzky trade, the Rangers gave up barely anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the best guy they gave up, and I can't remember his name right this minute, was a defenseman who did turn out to be a really decent defenseman in the NHL. And Marc-Andre Cliche was in that deal, who is still kicking around. But the point is, they gave up barely anything, and they got to a conference final with an old team that had no chance of beating the Flyers, but yet that was like his last big trade that worked. But in years leading up to that, if you go and look at Neil Smith's trades, except for the ones that that were engineered by Mike Keenan, they were all really good trades.
Well, I mean, the reason I bring up a guy like Schoenfeld and Russ, you mentioned another name and who's never been in management, and I'll mention it was Lindy Ruff. The reason I bring up Schoenfeld is because he brought in Pat LaFontaine, who had no managerial experience,
Right.
and then summarily dumped him when Tim Murray came in, and I think LaFontaine thought he was going to actually have power in the organization and then didn't. But Pegula seems to want that Sabre connection, and more so than with the Bills. And there hasn't been any kind of indication that he wanted to go down that road with the Bills. But with the Sabres, he likes going down the road of somebody who has a connection with the Sabres. That's why I mentioned Schoenfeld. But maybe Ruff, and maybe that won't happen at all. I mean, go ahead, Ek. What are the other names that you had?
So other assistant GMs, there's a couple other assistant GMs that I've heard too, and I do think that if I'm Pegula, I would go the assistant GM route because there are a lot of good ones available, like you talk about. Schoenfeld's. I don't think Schoenfeld's a bad idea, and I don't think. Here's a couple others Tom Fitzgerald. Okay, Tom Fitzgerald, who's assistant GM in New Jersey.
New Jersey, yeah,
is another guy that's really.
Yeah, he's paid his dues, and
he's paid his dues. He's a really good guy, obviously, but but also a seriously respected guy around the league.
And Russ, wasn't one of his sons drafted by the Sabres?
Yeah,
that's true. I have that too. I was looking on my notes here. So Casey Fitzgerald, right? Okay, so and also Casey Fitzgerald's tight with Eichel apparently.
Well, okay,
those guys know each other very well. So that I've heard too. So that's a good one. I get some of this from really good sources too. Pat Verbeek. Okay, so
yeah,
is, assistant GM in
Tampa.
Okay, and obviously what Tampa's done is pretty strong. He's not going anywhere in Tampa, so Verbeek is definitely one of those guys that's going to be out there looking for a job because he's not going to move up the chain.
Okay, Russ, and I like this guy a lot, and I keep going down this road, but I'll mention it right now. I really like this guy a lot. I've had some interaction with him when he's scouted in Toronto, and he's been an NHL GM before, and he's got a great eye for talent. How about Rick Dudley?
Rick Dudley is a great talent evaluator, but not a great GM. So I wouldn't go Dudley unless it was going to be a package deal with somebody else.
Yeah,
stronger on the business side. Mike, you were right. Gretzky was a UFA, but Neil Smith lured him there. For some reason, I thought he was traded there, and Cliche was in the Avery trade. My brain wasn't working there. But see, Dudley would help on the talent evaluating side, which I still think they need help with. But again, I go back to Neil Smith. He was able to get stars in New York, and I think he could get stars in Buffalo.
I'm not saying that's a completely out of the realm of possibility choice, but I mean, and I think Eck is right. There are a number of assistant GMs who, and these are the guys that every time a GM spot opens up, we hear the name of Paul Fenton, we hear the name of Michael Fuda, So I mean, it's the name I'm going to throw out there too, and I think this is because so far all these assistant GMs we've talked about mainly are ex-players, right? They really are. They're mainly ex-NHL players. Fitzgerald was, Verbeek was, Schoenfeld was, right? Fenton was. Yeah.
So I've heard the name Bill Zito in Columbus, and there's another name because Zito had an incredible run. Now he's an agent, so it's different. So you're going the opposite direction. He's an ex-agent. Ran one of the biggest agents, one of the best, most successful NHL agencies. Left that to become the assistant GM at Columbus. Took on the GM job for Columbus's AHL team last year, and took them to the Calder Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a remarkable amount of players, and they went 15-2 or something, or 16-2 in the playoffs. There was an incredible run that they had in the Calder Cup last year.
Right.
And an unbelievable amount of those AHL players are part of this Blue Jackets team. It's something like 8 or 9, right? Of that team that won the Calder Cup are on this Blue Jackets team that put up 114 points.
Right.
He's a really respected guy. I think that I've heard a lot about him before. I heard him involved with Washington last year.
Here's an interesting possibility because Fenton, like I said, Fenton, his name has been out there for years.
Mm-hmm.
And if Fenton would be the choice in Buffalo, don't be surprised if his choice for head coach would be Phil Housley.
I wouldn't be shocked at that.
Yeah.
Housley did a great job in the U.S. system with a lot of the kids, and even just in those little games like the All-American Prospects game, getting to talk to Housley a lot. Very smart guy. Here's the funny thing, though. The little bit of a read that I have on Pegula since he's been in this league and also watching him on the football side, I think he is only going to take a GM that has won a Stanley Cup, because I think he is looking for that big name. I don't think he's going to go for any assistant.
No, you might be right. You might very well be right. If that's the case, there's not that many available, right? And
that's why he might get one that's off the beaten path.
Right.
And Neil Smith, that's why Neil Smith makes sense. I get that.
No, but there's other guys. There's still probably other guys out there.
But Russ, what that also opens up to the possibility of, if, say, for example, because right now we know what the current structure in the NHL is. It's president, general manager, and coach. He could go for a guy like Lombardi and him be the team president, because there is your guy who has won Stanley Cups.
Bringing Lombardi, Lombardi.
Right, I'm just
hockey system enough. I'm just telling you, Lombardi is not going there. I really, there's other things I know too about this that I can't get into, but it's just not going to happen with Lombardi. It happens. Everyone will say, you said it would never happen, so I'm sure you can place your bets now. It's going to happen. Lombardi's going to be a savior. I'm telling you right now that everything I know about the people involved in this says no way Lombardi's going to be there.
Well, but you may very well be right, and you know more than I do. But using the parameters that Russ was talking about, it could be a guy like Neil Smith. It could be a guy like Craig Patrick,
right?
And I'm talking about them as team president. Them as a team president. Now, right now, the team president for the Buffalo Sabres is Russ Brandon, the former team president of the Buffalo Bills. I'm not going out on a limb to say that Russ Brandon probably doesn't know anything about hockey, or very little. He knows the business side of things, but he doesn't know how to run a hockey.
That didn't stop Charles Wong from making Mike Milbury GM.
Well, yes, but that's what I'm saying. And I'm talking about a two-pronged structure here that a lot of teams now are going down the road of. And if Buffalo wants to go down the young route like Arizona, I mean, John Shannon from Sportsnet just mentioned on the show previous to ours, mentioned Kyle Dubas, who was the heir apparent in Toronto, and I'm not so sure now that he is the heir apparent, because Mark Hunter is there and he's in charge of the draft and he's an assistant GM, and Dubas is very well thought of and in a pretty good hockey mind. And if the Sabres went down that road, I think the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres would be Sheldon Keefe, who Dubas worked with in Sault Ste. Marie and hired as the Toronto Marlies coach. So that's going to be interesting. Whoever gets hired as GM and the connections that they have to the next head coach of the Sabres.
I think Craig Patrick would have a chance. I do. I really think that, again, when you look at the Pittsburgh side of it, he brought Marc-Andre Fleury to that organization, and he's won a couple Stanley Cups too, obviously. So I think that is a name that's sort of hanging in the weeds. I do, because he's a well-respected guy who really doesn't have that position but has stayed around the game this entire time. I mean, I think there's a real good chance of that. I mean, what about, I'm just double-checking somebody else's availability here. All right, what about Bob Gainey?
Yeah, but he's been out of the game for a while. And
but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, if
Scotty Bowman was once out of the game for a while too, was he not?
Yeah, but don't bring up Scotty Bowman's name in Buffalo.
I know. I'm just saying I knew that, and I did bring it up as a point.
Buffalo is the one place that Scotty Bowman, did not win, and
right.
I have my.
Bob Gainey's 63. He's not too old for this position.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, but I really think that the smart. I mean, I know he's probably going to go. I mean, it makes sense that he would be the kind of GM you would think that would go with a Stanley Cup champion GM, but the kind of owner that would go that way. But I really think that that's the wrong way to go. I personally think that this is a situation where we were just talking about this the other day. Look at all the coaches that are getting let go. Like the coaches that are letting let go. A lot of them are, there's a new generation out there, and this is very much a new league with new kinds.
But this is a different owner, Rick. This is not a hockey owner.
No,
that's the part I think you're missing on.
No, I get that. He's definitely a hockey owner. No,
he's not a hockey owner. He is a hockey neophyte in a hockey business.
He's smart. He's very.
I'm not saying he's not smart.
He's a billionaire.
He doesn't hire. He's gotten to where he gotten to by putting the right people in charge of positions where he's had.
Well, if you look at the Buffalo Bills, that's not the case. He's a very smart.
I think actually he's more smart with hockey than he is football. I think we're going to connect him.
Well, the thing is he's a fan, and that's right. He's a billionaire fan. And right. I think sometimes that colors his judgment. I mean,
yes, but I know there's other billionaire fans in the NHL right now who are the owners of teams.
Right.
That are way worse.
Oh yeah. No.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing.
Get in the way of he has not one thing Murray did or didn't do as a result of Pegula forcing him to do or not do those things.
We don't know that. We don't. No,
I mean I've been told this by very good people that the one thing that's surprising about Pegula, for as much as he is a fan, he is one of those guys, and there are a couple of others out there like this, that just don't force their will onto their GM and say we got to go get this player because I happen to like that player. That's not what he does.
But what I am saying is that the Pegulas are fascinated by resumes.
Yeah.
And that's why and like I said, it may not be somebody who comes in as a general manager. They may say, okay, well, we need a hockey man to be team president. How about Brian Burke? How about Brad Treliving? I mean, Brad Treliving, I'm sure, is going to use the leverage of other positions that are opening to maybe get a new contract out of Calgary. I mean, there are a number of scenarios here. So
here's the way I look at it. If this is right, he bought the Sabres in 2011.
Correct.
That's a short time to be an owner, and in this short time, the Sabres have not been good.
No, and Russ, he came in the year that he bought them, and he threw money at the problem, and they traded for Brad Boyes to make a playoff run. Then the next year, right. they spent big money on Christian Ehrhoff and Ville Laino. And remember, he assumed control of Lindy Ruff and Darcy Regier, kept them around long past the time that I think they needed to be around. And then when he changed over, he changed to Ron Ralston as the coach, and then cleared Regier and Ralston out and brought in LaFontaine and Ted Nolan, and then changed LaFontaine within a couple months. So
now, have the Bandits won a championship?
I don't know. I don't follow.
All right, I'm going to look that up. But he owns the Bills, the Sabres, the Americans, the Bandits. So far, none of them had won a championship. None of them had been to a Super Bowl or a Stanley Cup.
I don't know much about
Calder Cup
football, but I do know. I do know that this is when he took over this team. They were years away from anything specific.
Well, they were a playoff team when they took over, but okay, they were a playoff team when he took over, but very quickly the direction of the Sabre franchise was to go down the road of the rebuild. And I don't criticize that because I think that was the right thing to do. Now, a lot of people in Buffalo have bemoaned the fact that they got Sam Reinhart instead of Aaron Ekblad, and that they struck out on not getting Connor McDavid and got Jack Eichel. But I think there's talent here. I just think that there's been some bad decisions by Tim Murray, and that cost him his job. And Dan Bilesma didn't. His handling of the team apparently was not pleasing to some of the roster. So we'll see what happens because we have no answers about what's going to happen in terms of who they're going to choose. But let's move to the games last night because first we have to. I wish I had my funeral dirge ready to play.
The championship, last in 2008. Did he own him then?
No.
So he has not won a championship in the National Lacrosse League either. Just saying. Yeah.
And the guy who was the head for the best player for the Bandits was the uncle of John Tavares, who's named John Tavares. But okay, so we have to give.
Let's get on to the game tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say let's start with the team that was eliminated and the team that swept, which is the Anaheim Ducks, sweeping the Calgary Flames. And I have to bring this up because it feeds into my narrative that I've talked about all year. Anaheim scores a goal very early in the first period on Brian Elliott, and Glenn Gulletson at 1-0 early in the first pulls Brian Elliott and puts
the goal.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
see the goal though. I mean, that was one of the worst goals ever given up. And that's like it was Tommy Salo bad. It was really bad. It felt bad for Elliott. But it was a bad goal. Like I wasn't at first. I had the same because I tuned into that game just as they were making that goalie change, and I'm like, oh, what the hell are they doing? They're down 1-0, and so I went back and I watched. The goal was just, it was really bad. So I think they had to make that move. But
okay, and you could see this coming a mile away, Russ, because Anaheim had dominated against Calgary over the last few years. I'm taking nothing away from Calgary because I love the talent on that team. I think Monahan's a great young player. Goudreau is really good. They got some good years out of guys like Backlund, and I think Sam Bennett's going to be a player, and their defense played in the second half of the year played much better. But this team will go nowhere until either John Gillies takes over as the number one goaltender, or if they go out this summer and get themselves a goaltender. Until they do that, they're going to be a borderline playoff team that will lose in the first round all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think the issue here is I just saw highlights. I didn't watch this game in its entirety. But when I saw the Nate Thompson goal, the defense was very – I'm going to use a Peter Laviolette phrase, very effing casual. Remember when he said that?
Oh, yeah. No, and it was true because, they scored that goal on a rebound. That was off the post. Like, you should never score a goal on a rebound that's off the post. Like, if that means that your defense let in a bad shot to go off the post and a bad rebound as well. Like, that was just crazy. It was
too casual. Like, they were just they were lost in space. It was just bad. And you're in the playoff game. You're basically you have a chance to be eliminated. And they didn't have it. I do say that Monahan had the fire, though. That goal by Monahan was
Gaudreau was totally shut down by Anaheim. Gaudreau had nothing going. And the whole series, he had nothing going. He had 3 assists in the series, I think, or something like that. So he was, and I've never, I don't know if he's playing with the right kinds of players. Like, I think they don't have Gaudreau in the right situation right now. That's what it really looks like. It's like, because watching him, we've seen him succeed before, and I wonder. By the way, I thought to myself, is he going to go over and play for the World Championship team too? Because that would be another.
Yeah, I think he's on. Yeah, he's on the roster.
That'd be another ringer, right, to go over there and play in the World Championships. The U.S. team would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
But the thing that stood out to me about this game is, as much as you can blame Elliott and Calgary definitely didn't show up, and Trevor League, I'm not sold on him or the coach. I'm really there's a lot of issues there. Anaheim's really good, like really.
Oh, no, Anaheim's defense is world class. We all
they
know.
are. They might be the best team in the West.
They could be.
Like, and given what we've seen out of Chicago, they are. They move where they're good, and this is what you see out of Stanley Cup teams all the time. Is they move the puck out of their own end so quickly and so efficiently.
Yes. That
you just watch them. They do. They remind me.
Thompson didn't do that. Like, Thompson actually had to kick the puck to himself. And Calgary was playing so far back that it didn't matter. Like, that was just that whole play was just
Calgary rushed in the last. I watched the last 2 periods of this game. Every time Calgary rushed the puck, every time Anaheim had a quick guy on the boards. They were out. They remind me of the Devils in the past. The Kings in the past. That just so frustrating to play against those kind of teams.
Well, I give Carlisle credit. He did play Gibson. That's the way he should go.
Yeah,
and you have to factor in the fact that yes, their defense is great, and they played most of the series without Vatanen and the entire series without Fowler, and they're probably going to get Fowler back for the second round at some point. So this team is going to get even better.
Yeah, they are way better than either San Jose or Edmonton right now, and it'll be interesting to see. Like, just watching them play.
Kessler's playing better. Corey Perry's playing great.
Yeah, Getzlaff's playing great too.
Getzlaff is playing better for sure. I'm not going to say great yet. I'm not.
Yeah, he's playing pretty great. He's got what?
He got an empty netter, but he has 3 goals, which is really good.
3 goals and 4 assists, something crazy like that, or something like that. I think.
But I'm still not.
In 4 games.
He's close to dominating. Let's see him do it in another series, and I'll give him full credit.
Yeah, I mean, and Calgary. I think Calgary is. I mean, Calgary was 1 goal back in every one of these games, which is pretty crazy. I mean, so as much as these is a 4-game sweep, it's not like they were blown out of the water. They definitely.
No.
They
No, and that's why I think Mike's right. You really can look at the goaltending and say, if it was just a little bit better, they definitely could have won one more game. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think the goaltending does affect the offense too. And I think that in a situation like that, it's definitely the goaltending makes players nervous to take chances. And I think that also played into it big time. I think that Anaheim's going to be really tough to beat. I think that, it's going to be. I mean, Calgary wasn't fantastic, but they weren't terrible, and Anaheim was just really, really good. Every time I watched it, I was just amazed by how efficient Anaheim was. And Bieksa, who we talked about yesterday, of maybe waiving his no trade clause, Bieksa, I think has kind of found like the fountain of youth right now. Like he looks more like the Bieksa that I remember.
Yeah, they're still buying him out. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, they're either buying.
But the guy I remember from Vancouver, he's very important to that team right now. Obviously,
I'm not disputing that, Act. But if it's a question of exposing Fowler and either buying out,
I get it, but he's not.
But he's recouped his reputation. I agree with that.
And maybe some team that was looking for a short-term fix on defense would trade for him since there's.
I think he had ability to trade for him, but whether or not he accepts the trade, like I said before, I doubt it. But
no.
I think that so then moving on, because a lot to do in 20 minutes here. So, moving on to Minnesota and St. Louis. I watched a lot of this game too, and I really. This really seemed like a game that St. Louis didn't show up for to me. Like as much as Minnesota played well and they did, and at times you saw some kinks in the armor for the goalie and for the Blues, but and at times Dubnyk looked really good again. So the Blues really might have blown it. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to blow the series, but they gave the Wild too much last night. They really gave away a game. They really did not show up for a playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw, I watched a little of this game. What I was noticing, and this was really the same for all of these games, Minnesota had worked very hard and didn't get a lot to show for it goal-wise. This game, they did. They got a little more to show for it, but they still outworked St. Louis. They did. They were the harder working team.
They've outworked St. Louis in 3 of the 4 games. I mean, actually.
And it's finally worked out for them.
Sobotka, and we were talking about like the whole thing, if you're going to come back from 3-0, something has to happen.
Yes.
When Sobotka went down with that injury last night, that's what occurred to me. Because he's been such a big player in this. Now he came back and played, but did not look like himself at all. And I'm very curious because when he went off, it looked like he had blown his knee out completely. And I thought, oh geez, he's done for the series. And that looked like a turning point. He came back and didn't play that well, but I still think that you gave Dubnyk confidence. Like Dubnyk, when he gets confidence, he's a different goalie. Give him a shutout. That's a great thing. I mean, it couldn't have gone better for Minnesota the way it went out.
Yeah.
I mean, anything scores. Like Martin Hansel scores. That's like crazy.
The Hansel goal was a great goal too.
It was a great goal, and it was about time that someone shoot from outside on Jake Allen. Because they've been trying to score on a goalie that big, close in. Like Minnesota's been trashing the net and trying to score those goals. It's almost impossible. So, Hansel takes that shot, a really kind of like a it was a good goal. It wasn't a great shot, but that's where Jake Allen in the past, that's where we've seen him fall apart in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Our shots from out, like that Hansel goal. And then there were 2 or 3 shots after that Hansel goal that he missed. I mean, one hit the post or a couple little flubs, and they were all from the outside. So as if the Wild were saying, we're going to shoot from outside now. There were certain subtle things that make me wonder.
We buried the lead here too. We did. Normally, when there's these interviews on the bench, you could basically just go get popcorn, go do something else. Coaches say nothing. But Bruce Boudreau is not that guy. He is always honest, if nothing else, right? And he said something. They asked him about the change in lines, that he finally did it, and he said, you know what? And he was almost embarrassed by it because he's that loyal. He goes, you know what? We had these lines. They worked all year, but they got stale. So I had to make a change.
Yeah.
That could probably help them tremendously now in this series because he was reluctant to do that.
It does, and he's the kind of guy, I think everything that they won, and I think Game 5 is going to be fascinating in this series. And I do believe that if Minnesota wins Game 5, this gets really good because of all the series that this, I don't know, now Boston, Ottawa, I didn't see much of. So,
I saw enough to see this.
Yeah.
we're finally living in an age where I no longer have to defend Erik Karlsson.
Yeah.
He can do it for himself, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, he's like having a Conn Smythe series. Like, there's no question about that.
He looks like Brian Leach out there, for a lack of a better term, and he's
Yeah.
a better skater than Brian Leach, which is hard to say because Leach was one of the best of his era,
Right.
but he's a better skater.
And he's bigger, right? He's bigger than Brian.
And he's a little taller, but Leach is a little wider, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, he's having an unbelievable, and and Bobby Ryan. I mean, I'm just happy for Bobby Ryan. I mean, having he's been so maligned for so many years in different situations.
Ryan looks great too.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, in Ottawa, I think that the criticism was justified based on the salary that he's being paid and the lack of.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying it wasn't justified at all. Like,
right. I know. But I mean, the funny thing is that look at the inability of Boston to generate any consistent offense.
No, and this is what's fascinating about this. You're right, Mike. And what's fascinating about this is they lost both games in Boston. And I don't think many people picked Ottawa in 5. Like, if that's going to happen, that's going to be kind of crazy. Boston looked like they're the more experienced team. All the things reasons. Remember, I picked Ottawa in this series, but I was like, I don't, just because I feel like one of these series is going to go a weird way.
Yeah,
I also picked Calgary, so I'm not brilliant. But so I'll bring that up now too, because
a lot of people are criticizing Rask. They shouldn't be criticizing Rask.
No, not at all. I mean, that's a one. When you lose 1-0, it's not your goalie's fault.
No, but they're not criticizing him for the 1-0 game. But before that, they were criticizing him.
Or the 2-1 game. I mean, these are like.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying they are.
1 goal in 6 periods at home in the playoffs. I mean, that's like, you can't do that. This is, to me, this is really going to be fascinating how this all plays out, because the Boston plan, of firing Julian and bringing in, we all talked about how well is this put together, how much is this old vendetta against, Chiarelli, and they've got to get all these different players in here. And it worked for a while, and it looked like they were doing okay. And then I thought, well, they got a good seat. They're going to have a good shot at getting to the second round.
Well, has Cassidy done enough now to take the interim tag off? I mean, they haven't done it yet.
No, I don't think so at all.
Not in my eyes, no.
No, there's not a chance. And I think the GM should be called. I don't know. I think the whole thing should be blown up in Boston. That's my opinion. But
it could happen if Ottawa wins this series. It wouldn't shock me if that's exactly what happened.
5, because this is an Ottawa team that's hurt, and they're getting beaten by Bobby Ryan. And again, I'm not dissing Bobby Ryan, but I'm just saying that they're not getting. This is not a powerhouse team. This is not. They're not playing Montreal. They're not.
And the Bruins are.
Toronto is better than Ottawa right now. So I mean, this is like to me, this is that Ottawa's taking this thing is incredible.
With a series that close, the injury to Torrey Krug at the end of the regular season was a killer. Because Boston's power play is virtually non-existent, and Krug is the quarterback of that power play. And I think McAvoy has done very well for a 19-year-old being thrown into the sausage grinder of the playoffs. But when you have to play Chara so many minutes, and he's 40 years old, it's killing him. He's not the defenseman of 5 or 6 years ago. He's an older defenseman who's slower, and in instances the Senators are just going right around him. So
Boston reminds me of the Flyers in like 2013 in there right now. Like, this Boston team reminds me of that team where you have like a couple of these great players on the team. You've got like they had the Marchand and Bergeron, Giroux, Voracek, but then you have this huge gap. And the young players have come on too slowly, so they're
except for Pasternak. He's come on just right.
Except for Pasternak, of course, and he's great. The Krejci, they give him too much money to, but who's hurt all the time, but is a great player. All right, so let's get on to the main event before we get any further. We did our best not to talk about Toronto today, guys. So we're going to talk about them now, though, because that was an interesting game. Okay, so
I watched every minute of that game.
I like Mike's text that the movie playing is Reality Bites, because that was pretty in the first period, and I thought that's true, because this Washington came out and made that statement. They said, you know what? By the way, we're the best team in the league. We won the President's Trophy. We're going. You're not going to beat us in 4 games or 5 games. But yet, despite going up 4-1, right? And I gave up on I stopped watching this game. Okay, so I didn't watch the third period of this game, because I got to watch Minnesota in that game, because
people are now booing you. They're booing you.
I thought the game was over. So I'm like, and as much as I love to watch that series, the Wild, and that was an elimination game, so I'm going to watch that.
Okay.
Go into that game. And then I'm shocked to see. I did not see until the game was over that it ended up 5-4. When I saw it end up 5-4. Tell me what happened. How did it become 5-4? Like, how's that game? I mean, I know it wasn't really
Well, Matthews scored to make it 4-3 with about 8 minutes left to go in the third, and then about a minute later there was a complete cluster F in the Leafs defensive zone, and Oshie gets the puck and beats Anderson to put them back up by 2, and then Bozak scored with about 25 seconds left to go.
25 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, and 5-4. So really, I mean, the score was 1 goal, but I don't think it was reflective of.
And they never really got another chance after that.
Right. No. Let me say this. The game followed the Game 3 script up to a point. Washington comes out, scores 2 goals quickly. The Leafs come back. They get a goal late in or midway through the first by Matthews. They're in it for a while, but really it was domination by the Caps for the first, I would say, 25 minutes of the game. They're up 4-1, and this is the problem. The Leafs continue to dig themselves holes, and they've been able to dig themselves out of them to some part throughout the series. But you cannot keep doing that to the Capitals. But here's the thing that I do not understand. Barry Trotz and the Caps, they did it again. They said they were leading 4-2 in the third period. They took a couple stupid penalties at the end of the second. There was a 5-on-3.
Right, wait, let's stop it right there for just a sec, because these weren't just stupid penalties. These were horrifically, and I even called them chokers on Twitter at that point, Ek, because the first penalty I can't remember, but the second one, Brooks Orpik took 3 chops and eventually knocked the stick out of whatever Leafs hands, and that became that became a 5-on-3 situation going into the next period. Now the Leafs blew that, but the point is, if you're a championship team, you can't get 2 penalties with 15 seconds to go in a period. Even Barry Trotz looked completely blown away by this. Yeah. Like, what are these guys doing? And it was crazy, Mike. That was a crazy moment.
Right, that was the opportunity. Yes,
that
the Leafs had. They were down 4-2. They had a 5-on-3 for almost 2 full minutes. They had some scoring chances. They couldn't get it by Holtby, and there was a sag there until Matthews scored about 12 minutes later. But the thing is, the shots on goal in the third period were 19-3 in favor of Toronto. Yep. Trotz and the Caps did the same damn thing that they did in Game 3. They sat back into a 1-3-1, into a defensive shell, and they let the Leafs take the play to them. And, honestly, they may get by the Leafs because the Leafs are too young and don't have a good enough defense, but they are going to get eviscerated by the Pittsburgh Penguins if they try to play that kind of game and sit on leads. It doesn't work anymore.
Here's my one thing, and you're the Leaf expert, but I've watched quite a few games of theirs this year. The few things that they do well, which makes for a good counter-punching team, and the Rangers are a similar team in that way, is they have a couple of guys that can make the long stretch pass, and they've got 2 or 3 guys that can skate like the wind, and Matthews in close is impossible to stop at some point during games. And when you have those things, you never have a safe lead, and you should never sit back on a lead. And I was proud of the Caps in the first period that they were piling it on. Yeah. They should have scored 6 goals early in that game, and then maybe you can make the argument you can go into the 1-3-1, but they should never go into the 1-3-1 against the Leafs. Never, ever again. It's a huge mistake.
Yeah, it feels to be like there's like this, I didn't see last night's third period, but it does sound exactly like I expected it would sound. And it sounds like other parts of the series. I've seen every other period of this series. And to me, that I've questioned the Capitals' willingness to work hard enough to win this series at times. Like they seem to, when they get ahead, they seem
this
to.
One they did. No, this one they worked hard.
They outshot 19-3. I mean, that's like.
They were told to do that.
Yeah, they worked harder in the first 2 periods than they did in games.
Right. No, they did, and they did. They definitely did. That first period was that was a hard working period. That's like we are playing a team that's not way worse than us. We're playing a team that we have to play hard against to beat, and they came out and they did that.
And how ironic is it that Mike Babcock, signaled out before the series and says, well, we're more worried about guys like Backstrom and Ovechkin than Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson's a hardworking guy, but we're concentrating on him. And Tom Wilson is the guy who's gutted the Leafs by scoring the overtime goal in Game 1 and 2 goals yesterday.
Tom Wilson was a really great scorer in juniors.
Yeah, and you've seen this before, Adam. Well, you can see this coming. Like I've said many times that Wilson, when they signed Wilson last year, I guess it was, to like an extension for relatively cheap, I was like, wow, they are really getting something. Like it reminds me of Bickle when Bickle came, at first until Bickle got, hurt and lost his way. you can see it. They're very similar players to me. And Wilson just has the strength, and yeah, he's a sniper too. He's got. You can see. I mean, I didn't know he was a good scorer in juniors for us, but you can see it. He's a skilled player, and there's no question about that.
No, and the thing is, he's a great athlete. And what they did was they basically told him early on. Look, I wasn't privy to the conversation, but clearly they said, if you play the role of tough guy because of your skating and your physical ability, you'll have a quicker path to the NHL. He took it. And now they're expanding his role because they realize, hey, they're leaving Tom Wilson open on the ice, and this guy has a shot.
It's not that they're leaving him open, Russ. It's the fact that the Leafs do not have a defenseman other than Roman Polak who could stop him from going to the net. They've got a bunch of guys who are more offensive-minded, skating defensemen, and when a big guy like Wilson tries to drive the net, good luck, Jake Gardner or Nikita Zaitsev trying to cut him off. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Wilson had 23 goals. He was hurt. His first year he didn't play a lot with Plymouth. His second year he only scored 9 goals. But his third year is when I interviewed him and he said he had a great workout routine. He kind of figured out the game, and he had 23 goals and had 58 points in 48 games. And that's the year that I'm sort of referring to when I realized, hey, this guy could score some goals.
Now, is it? Yeah. And last year I was impressed with him in the playoffs too. He scored a big goal in the playoffs last year too. I think against Pittsburgh, or I forget one of the games
against Philadelphia. I think
against Philadelphia. You're right.
It was against Philly, yes.
Yeah, and he just looks like he's got he looks like the real deal, and he's obviously on this crazy star-studded talented team. But what I like about him is he doesn't take a shift off. You can see Kuznetsov takes shifts off all the time, and in this series especially. He has got to be one of the most frustrating players to watch. And if you're a fan of the Capitals, I'm sure you're like, yes, thank God someone else says it, because if you watch Capitals all the time, I'm sure you're just so fed up with Kuznetsov by now, because he's like this kid. He reminds me so much of
Semin.
No, he's not Seminish. He's not quite that.
Nobody is Semin. Here's how bad it got for Semin. I think he was scoreless in 23 games in the KHL. And what I was told from overseas, that I literally got a message about this, that fans over there were calling him a fake hockey player.
Wow, I've been called a fake blogger, but never a fake hockey player.
One thing before we talk.
He reminds me of Alexei Kovalev at times in Kovalev's career, when it was like when he would sit there and now said all the talent in the world, but then there were times when he was like, what is he doing?
Right.
Where is he try? Is he even trying out there? My wife brought it up. Why is that guy not trying? For my wife to say, why is that guy not trying when watching a hockey game? You have to really be not trying. You have to go out of your way to not try, for my wife to pick up on the fact that you're not trying. I mean, I started laughing. And, she loves his name too. She thinks his name's hilarious. But besides that, we're just laughing about the whole thing. He's just not trying.
One thing before we talk about the 4 games tonight, or at least touch on them.
Yeah.
Something that we'll probably see a great deal during the summer. Nikita Tremakhin, I always mispronounce his name, the big defenseman from Vancouver. He signed a 1-year deal in the KHL. Sergei Kalinin, who played for the Devils, is currently playing for the Marlies. There are rumors out he's going to sign in the KHL. This is going to be the beginning of keeping a watchful eye on these Russian players with the NHL not going to the Olympics. I don't know if it's going to be a rash of them, but I'm sure there's going to be some significant players who are going to depart the NHL and go back to the KHL at least for a year because of the Olympics.
Yeah, Kalinin's going to be with SKA. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of players now that are going to stay in the KHL based on the Olympics in hopes that they can make the Olympic team. And it's going to hurt NHL GMs in this offseason. I think it already hurt Murray because they clearly had the inside track on Antipin, and he's their best player. If they would have gotten him over here, he would have been the equivalent of getting Medvedev 10 years earlier.
Well, and this is the thing. What this is going to do is, in the short term, Russ, I think it's going to help the veteran players who had tough times getting jobs this year, because there won't be as many options in Europe, because a lot, not only Russia, but Finnish players playing in the Finnish Elite League, or Swedish players playing in the SHL. If the NHL is not going to the Olympics, which they're not, those players will either stay over there, or you have some players going back. And I think that'll help guys who are 31, 32 years old looking for that contract. A guy like Roman Polak for the Leafs, He's a UFA. He's 31. He'll be 31 years old. He'll get another deal from the Leafs or somebody else because there are not going to be as many options for other teams to sign a short-term guy.
All right, so check this headline out as we shift into tonight's games. This is my favorite NHL.com, not the NHL.com, because there's a lot of great writers there. But this headline just totally, I'm like, really, guys? Like, you got to work a little harder than this one. All right, ready? Here we go. Here we go. Bring it up right now. Apologize for the
go down 3-1.
What is happening?
Oh!
They jump
Not
out
me.
quickly. Ovechkin makes it 2-0.
Not me. Who's that?
Gene did the exact same thing last game. It didn't quite work out as good.
What's happening?
Omen up good things.
Not on my side.
Bad things to come.
Now, the Maple Leafs have come right back. Zach cuts the deficit in half.
Yeah, 50 goal, just a little puck that goes in off the
guys.
skate.
I'm going to mute you. One of you.
In the series, if you're
Not me.
It's Mike. I muted Mike. It was Mike.
Okay.
Coming from you. All right, so this is the headline. Ready? Here we go. Sorry. Apologize. They're like, oh, man, I had it all set up and everything. Mike.
I don't know what that was.
All right. The headline is, I'm not going to put it up there and just going to tell you what it is. Blackhawks think the pressure is on for Game 4.
Yeah.
All right, now come on. You think the Blackhawks should think?
No. The headline was the Blackhawks think the pressure is on the Preds for Game 4.
Was that the headline?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I misread that.
Even
All
that's
right.
funny too.
All right, that I take it back. That's at least, that is funny.
They're trying to.
It's still funny though.
It's always on the, but that's such a, oh man, such a
I don't
minor
think the
league
Preds really
distraction.
feel that way. I will say that.
What was that?
I don't think the Preds feel that way.
No, I don't think so either. This Predators team has been down this road before.
Yes.
There's enough players on this team who know the Hawks, and they know what the deal is. They know that if you give the Hawks one game, you're in trouble. They know this. It's completely obvious.
This game in Nashville.
Yes.
It's in Nashville, yeah.
All right, I'm going to predict that Charlie Daniels will do the national anthem for this game with the fiddle.
If I'm them, there's no way I'm not bringing out Carrie Underwood again. There's no way. You have to
Will
bring
it
out
be a surprise? Is this a big surprise if she does it?
No. It's right now that there's nothing in God's green earth. If you're Mike Fisher, you're like, if I've ever asked you of anything, this is tonight. You're doing this again because they got to win this game because the pressure is on them. But
during a TV timeout, Charlie's going to break out the fiddle and play "The Devil Went Down to Chicago."
Absolutely, yes.
That would be great, and that could happen. But people don't talk about the one thing that happens. I'm gonna go so fast. But the one thing that happens in Nashville all the time is that they have this thing that they do in the third period on a TV timeout where they don't turn anything on and they let the crowd go crazy for 3 or 4 minutes or whatever it is. It is one of the coolest things out there. And it's just, I don't know why other teams haven't done this. It's such a cool thing. They literally just turn off everything. They turn off there's no cheesy, which puck is which puck is the hat hidden under or whatever, or the hat, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, they do this. It's loud and it's great. Nashville, Chicago. I don't see any way Chicago doesn't win tonight. I'm gonna throw that out there. I think Chicago.
I want to say this segment is sponsored by the Waffle House too.
Well,
Right,
the game that I'll be focusing on.
Every time you get a Waffle House, you take away just one day of your life. Just throw it away.
The game that
I've thrown away a few then.
Yeah, you have. I've thrown away about a year.
The game that I'll be focusing on tonight will be the Rangers in Montreal, and I'm gonna put together a pool. Which Montreal Canadian player will throw the first cheap shot? My money is on Alexei Emelin.
I think the Canadians are playing a great.
I'm gonna go Gallagher.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down this road. I think that
you don't have to act. They'll do it whether you do go down this road or not.
I think it's unfair to target the Canadians as being the team that's just taking cheap shots in this series.
Whoa, God! They are the leaders in cheap shots in the playoffs. Everybody will tell you that.
No, I know, but I'm not saying they aren't. But I think the Rangers aren't exactly the.
I'm not calling them wallflowers, but
I'm just saying it's the propensity of cheap shots from the Canadians compared to what the Rangers have done. I mean, Rick Nash's cross checks to the back of Andrei Markov wouldn't have been done if Andrei Markov didn't try to circumcise him with the stick.
Should we also talk about Draisaitl? He gets a call, but he doesn't get suspended.
Who was the Moyle, Mike? Who was the Moyle then?
But Eck, hold on.
Yeah.
So we talked about the spearing. It's been going on like crazy.
Yeah.
They do give a call, right? Draisaitl gets a call and he doesn't get a suspension?
I know that was pretty crazy, and like I said, they really. I don't understand that at all. I think because of what happened, because I really think this is because of Markov's thing that they couldn't suspend him. I honestly think that's the case.
That may be true. That might be
I think
true.
they looked at it and they're like, it's not worse than Markov's thing, so we can't suspend him. It's gonna be a hell of a game tonight. I love the fact you love the original 6 teams, because the thing about this is, like, I will always remember the turning point of the Vancouver Canucks Bruins Stanley Cup final, and these 2 coaches were involved, so that's why I bring it up, right? The turning point of that final was when Horton was hurt. But when the Canucks hurt Nathan Horton, who they took a shot at him, he's knocked out and never really played again, I don't think, in the NHL for the most part.
No, he played.
He did play a little bit more. Okay, so yeah, but he gets hurt in that series, and I was in Vancouver, and Vancouver was rolling. Okay, they were rolling in that game, and it looked like Vancouver had everything going. And what happened is they woke up, and I remember turning right to, like, I forget who was next to me. It was a really famous one of the more famous writers in the NHL, and I looked at him. You know what just happened? They just woke up an original 6 team. Like, Vancouver just woke up the Bruins, and they are about to learn what it's like to wake up an original 6 team with a cheap shot. And because the Canucks play in a division at that point, that division was nothing like the Bruins were playing in.
Wasn't that Aaron Rome, Russ?
Aaron Rome, very good call. And did he get suspended? I think he even did get suspended.
Yeah, he got suspended.
Yeah,
but
I think Radulov will get back to business on this one. I do. I think he'll stop a lot of the nonsense. I think the coach will tell him. I think.
Oh yeah, he will.
I think the Canadians.
And you're seeing it in this series. I love watching the original 6 teams go, because that's happening all over the place. Like, you're waking up. The Canadians have taken too many cheap shots, and they did wake up the Rangers. And I think the Rangers, there was a moment when that happened. I'm not sure where, it was.
Yeah, Rick Nash was a beast that last game. He was really great. I'd like to see that again. 2 predictions. First one is the Canadians will run out of hot dogs in the press box. They will run out by the end of the second period. And then the other prediction is Cam Connor will put up one of his best fights again, now against the Montreal Canadiens.
Cam Connor used to be with the Montreal Canadiens. That's the funny thing. He won cups.
It's gonna be fun. I mean, this is gonna be a lot of fun. There's nothing like it. Like, I always wish I was at playoff games in Montreal. I've been to playoff.
It's an amazing place. It is.
I heard the hot dogs are really good.
In Montreal is just unbelievable. Like,
I heard the hot dogs are really, really good.
No, they are.
No, I don't eat them.
I mean, I was up there for a couple of times for the playoff, and it's just incredible to walk around the city, to be the whole feeling of that city. And I'm sure Toronto is the same way. I've never been in Toronto for a playoff game, obviously, because there haven't been that many opportunities.
They haven't been in many the last 13 years.
But I've been there for the World Cup. That doesn't come close to this. So
I can tell you, because I was in Maple Leaf Square yesterday, and I'll just be brief about this. The crowd was a bigger crowd for Game 4 than it was for Game 3, and I mean, the problem was in both instances, Washington got up early, and they stuck around. But when it got 4-1, there was definitely a downshift in emotion. So I mean, they want to celebrate, but I think the fan base in Toronto was realistic. They know that the Capitals are the favored team in this series. They know that it's a very big long shot that the Leafs are going to win, but they want to see their team win. So I
want to show one thing that's interesting. So this is from Steve Alliquette. He's been doing work with MSG. That is a graph, and I'm not going to play the video on how you beat Carey Price. I find it interesting, but it's not like the Rangers have scored a ton of goals on Carey Price.
What does it mean? It looks like
it's just like, part of it. One of it says rebounds. One of it's, he's basically showing how you could score.
What is the blue? What's the big blue? Like, is that the
clear sight? Like, if he's like
unscreened.
The worst way you could
that is your
score. Yeah,
I've talked to a lot of people about Carey Price before, and they all say the same thing, that you should shoot from everywhere, because he is one of those goalies. Like, apparently Lundqvist is different with that. Lundqvist is better on making saves from weird angles and stuff like that. You can beat Price from a weird angle once in a while. Price is.
Well, here's the number one. The number one, and I've got to read it on very small type. So for anybody in my family that ever said I need glasses, I'm giving them the middle finger. But the first one is screens, which is obvious. But the second one is not obvious. It's one-timers.
Yep, and there's a reason for that, because of the way he plays. Like, Price is all about positioning, and if he doesn't have as much time to get into position, that he's phenomenal goalie. There's no like getting around it. If you're
big blue is, if he can see the puck, he's stopping it.
If he can see the puck, he can stop it. And if you don't get him moving side to side, you're screwed. You got to get him moving side to side.
But I like what Alliquette's doing. He's a very cerebral guy. If you remember, Eck, He's the one who had the quote after a win against the Flyers, and he used to beat the Flyers regularly, that this was like this game to him, like it was probably the best game I'd ever seen him play, and he said it felt like I was playing like whatever year it was, NHL 15.
Yeah.
It was really funny.
Yeah. No, he's a class character. All right, so then we have to talk about the other. I mean, Columbus is fighting for their lives tonight.
Yes.
Anything Columbus gets from this point on is a bonus for them. I think that this will be a really hard game for them to win. Obviously, they're back in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, though, has had a tendency to, if I'm going to give Blue Jackets fans any hope at all, the Penguins have not always been the greatest team at home trying to eliminate other teams. They tend to eliminate teams on the road for what it's worth. They do. Like when we talked about the fact they've never seen a Stanley Cup celebration in that building, which is crazy. Never seen a Stanley Cup building that was there. Actually, the I shouldn't say that the Red Wings celebrated in their building, but they've never won a celebration in their building. So
right, and the other series, Zach. I mean, it's going to be the most interesting thing to me is seeing what Edmonton does in terms of bouncing back from 7-0.
There's so much drama tonight. There's so much great drama going on tonight. You could see 4 overtime games again tonight.
This is the video of the week, though. That is John Tortorella with the dog face with, I guess, one of his kids.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah.
That is real. And it just goes to show you, Mike, like I've always said, he loves dogs. This guy loves
dogs, and he's not a bad guy. He's just
no, he's not a bad guy.
He's not a bad guy. He just has his thing, He has his way. His what works for him in coaching, If Tortorella gets eliminated tonight, is there any chance that he's back next year? Not back next year?
No, he's back.
No,
he's back, right? So I mean, it's not. We're not looking at that. I mean, it's funny because he'll be back, but should he be back?
Yes.
Yes.
He's gonna be coach of the year, Ak.
I know, but I know that, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but he always
no.
When you think Tortorella is safe is when he is at his worst.
Yeah, no.
That is the truth of it in his career. Like
honestly, if Jarmo Kekalainen decided to
I know. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%, but I'm just saying that don't be shocked if we're here like at the end of next year saying, man,
Well, that's the end of next year. We always know the Jack Adams Trophy winners are always susceptible.
I'm not saying he's not going to be back. I'm just saying that, but I think San Jose Edmonton is going to be an awesome game, and that that we could talk an entire hour about that, but we can't because we're out of time. We're going as fast as we can here. Sorry about the quickness, but we had the Buffalo thing as well to deal with today.
We did.
Hockey gods are very good.
All right, let's go.
Here we go. Picking the winner. It's coming up any second. My screen share is not working, so I'm just going to tell you what it is. Okay, here we go. The winner is, trust me on this, the winner is the New York Islanders. Wow.
Wow, that's the first one.
That's the first time they've won. Followed by the Colorado Avalanche. A little bit more often. And then the Vegas Golden Knights.
Would this solve the John Tavares problem if they got Nolan Patrick? It just might.
Yeah, wouldn't that? That might. Boy, that would be great. I actually know. I mean, there's so many places you want.
That would be but that would be a great thing for the Islanders to have happen. It would.
Right now, with everything that's going on with them, the fans would go nuts. Can you imagine?
They would go nuts.
I mean, they would be so thrilled. I mean, because the Islanders fans are among the most passionate in the world. They love the draft, and they would just go absolutely crazy.
Everybody would be eating Zorn's chicken, and hopefully Zorn's would send me some free chicken. They would.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
It's straight down Hempstead Turnpike. It's the greatest chicken on Long Island. If you ever go anywhere near National
I've met
Coliseum,
some pretty nice chickens on Long Island.
No, trust me, this is.
There's a better chance of me getting free burritos from Moe's.
The greatest chicken on Long Island. That should be a T-shirt. There you have it. I am the greatest chicken on Long Island. I don't know. I thought his name was Dan. Anyway, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight.